set to 2 and make a curve. Here's where I laid the point, but I'll make a curve kind of leading to a fall off from there, and creating the curve from there. If I hit enter, and for placing things, you want to use your 4 views to place that, because you know it doesn't work well working in your perspective. So if I place that, you can see, here's an example, center pivot's way off. If I'm trying to rotate this, that doesn't work at all. If I center my pivot, I can rotate it easily. And then what I do is I go over to options, and from there, you know, I'll say, well, I want to reset rotations, and then I want it to rotate this way in the z-axis, and you can just type in 90 and it'll be completely flat that way. And this is really showing you where you'll get into problems with history. I duplicate it and move it over here, and I'm in my menu. If I go surfaces and select both of these and then loft it, it'll actually create a shape between those two. And you can see center pivot's way off. I want to reset that. I use that all the time. Now it's in the middle. So yeah, I was doing a project. I made a rocket using NURBS. That would be more the revolve. But I wanted to attach it to my motion path, and as soon as I move it, or actually loft is pretty forgiving, but what history allows you to do, you have your vertexes, and you can actually affect the shape by moving those, since there's history. So it can be useful for things like that. Really quick, I'm going to pull up something to loft. I'll just make a really quick, poorly done cup. It's a good tool to know. So this probably won't turn out quite right, but it's just center my pivot yet again, move it this direction 90 degrees, and this direction, oops, wanted to grab the blue, the Y 90 degrees. Well, your surfaces revolve, gives me that cool shape. Center my pivot again. Based on that, and with the inputs, yeah, you can affect that. Anyway, there's this shape, so I'm like, cool. Well, I want to move that onto the table. Well, why is it not freaking out? And yet again, we can use the control points to affect the shape, and that's doing kind of an inverse move around. Anyways, I'm trying to think of the exact scenario. I created this where I attached it to the motion path, and it wanted to stay attached, and you have to delete the history in order for that to stay attached. And so once we delete the history on this, now we have all that freed up space, and if we go to edit this, it doesn't affect it at all. And that's true for this. So unless you really, you know, want to control it yet again using this, or you know, you want to really have history, you don't have to worry too much about deleting history on something. Generally, you can kind of go through it and save your memory a little bit. Anyways, let's get on to a little bit of texturing for this. And, you know, I thought of editing out the things, but I feel like this really kind of demonstrates the troubles you run into, and it won't work how you're hoping it will. So there's always problems to solve and things to tweak. That's always a part of 3D. Anyways, under display, when you're going to add texture to it, you can go under these windows, and you can either kind of apply it on its own, or rendering editor, you can use Hypershade. But since this is a beginning tutorial, really you can apply it all within the attributes, and Hypershade just gives you a lot more flexibility. And for example, if you create something and you want to apply it to multiple things, that makes it a lot easier to connect it to different channels like color and bump. Anyways, we'll keep it simple. If you right click over, you have all these options. We've been using these a lot. Well, there's all these actions down here. And if we go to material attributes, that'll have the default shader. Well, we want to make a new material. So we'll go down and do assign new material. And why don't we do a blend shader on this? So anyways, we have our blend shader set up just for this, and all this stuff is kind of happening behind the scenes in Hypershade right now, but we can kind of use this accessing our menus. And anyways, so we're affecting the color, and you have to render it before you can make it work, and that's this little button here, render the frame, and that'll show it. Then there's Maya software, Maya hardware. Well, often I use Mental Ray. Well, where did it go? It took me a month. I was mad that Mental Ray went away. However, it did not. It just loves uninstalling itself all the time. Go to Windows, Setting Preferences, Plugin Manager. Way down here. Let's see. Maya to Mental Ray bundle. Loaded. Check it to auto load so it'll load next time. Well, it probably won't, and you'll probably have to do it again. But once you get used to that, I don't know, it's just part of my ordinary routine, just starting it up. And if you're using Mental Ray to render and you're reloading a scene, then it should work alright. It takes a little bit to load. No, I don't want to save that. Now when you go to render, still my software, now we have Mental Ray, which is a much better renderer, which you can't see quite yet since we don't have many things applied. But anyways, now we want to get to our material. How do we get back? Well, we can click here, go over to our blend, there it's back. We can also right click and go to material attributes, and that'll set it up like here. Anyways, so yeah, we have our color. You can transparency is how see-through it is, can be useful. Incandescence, it actually kind of emits light, and you can actually use this to emit lights onto other objects. Anyways, I won't go too into this, but eccentricity is kind of the roll-off, so there's a big specular highlight where something very metallic like a car will have a tiny specular highlight, and you can set that. You can also have it reflect, so blend is often used for cars and things like that. And this is a Maya shading object. There's also, all of these are Mental Ray, and those are pretty advanced, so I'd recommend just when you're getting started, a blend if you're doing something reflective, and a Lambert if you don't want reflections and things like that. Anyways, so we've got this set up. Now, a cool thing called bump mapping. Let me see, I want it a lot more transparent. Oops. I want it to be fully transparent, and it looks see-through just because. Let me set this to red, and more of a roll-off. Anyways. Now, bump mapping. So when you click any of these, you can assign something to it. You can assign a photograph or any of these things here. Yeah, there's 3D textures, 2D textures. You go to File if you want to assign it. You can assign a picture. That's pretty cool. Anyways, why don't I find my fractal? So it takes me into fractal, and